Well, in my time as the introduction was said that Hayek was my great uncle, and so obviously I have to bring him into the conversation somehow. And what he was most famous for was his work on economic cycles, on booms and busts. And I think there are economic cycles and there are political cycles, so I'd like to address how we got to this situation today. I'm guessing, but I'm not sure. How many of you were born in the 1990s? 2000s? No, 1990s. Most of you were born in the 1990s. I started my career working for Bank of America, and I was responsible for Eastern Europe. And so I came here in the times before the individual countries were founded. At that time, the world was split. You had the capitalist, free market, Western Europe, US. You had the socialist and communist countries, and then in Asia you were kind of split one way or the other. And all that changed in the 1990s, and three things happened simultaneously. First of all, the Iron Curtain came down, and I'm going to say, okay, that's a great thing for democracy, but it was also a great thing for trade, because in a lot of the ex-socialist and ex-communist countries, I don't have to tell you, there were not a lot of goods. Somehow, 5-year plans didn't supply people with the stuff they wanted. So there was enough enormous pent-up demand for new goods. That's the one thing that happened. People in Eastern Europe started buying things like crazy. Before the shops opened in Budapest and Bratislava, people were storming the cities in Vienna. So naturally, there was a boom cycle just created by this purchasing power. The second thing that happened was that China opened up. So now you had two huge trading blocs that joined the world economy that had done little to no trading with the rest of the world before that. This created a feedback loop because they began manufacturing stuff and they needed commodities. So Australia and Latin America, which had been kind of going along thing, started exporting things like crazy, commodities. And the third thing that happened was this. How many of you guys have an iPhone, smartphone, whatever? I'm guessing everybody. Didn't exist. And that's another part of the trade cycle that happened there. We said US has a trade deficit with China. Yes, it does. And the iPhones are all made in China. Except the intellectual property for that iPhone are developed where? In Silicon Valley. So I'm going to come back to the 1990s. We had three things going on. We had huge trade, we had the world economy going up, we had the stock markets going up because of the bubble, and in the words of the Lego movie, everything was awesome. Then the stock market bubble in technology burst. We had a dip there. And of course, governments, as they are wont to do, they reacted in the wrong way. And they kept on pumping money into the system because they had a dip in the technology side. So they created a housing bubble in the States by cheap money. Boom, 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 more. Then we had the next dip. We had the world financial crisis. Okay, a bunch of people speculated on housing in the US, but why a bank in East Germany had $3 billion in mortgage-backed security, nobody knows. It was all the consequence of cheap money. And then again, the people reacted wrongly. They let all of these banks, they bailed them all out. And then they bailed out every company that had some kind of a problem. Now you're going to say this, what's this guy talking about? How did we get from there to Trump? I'll tell you. Some people felt left out of this boom cycle, and when the dip came, they noticed it. Because people benefiting from the state and benefiting from the free money and so on were just making huge amounts of money, where your normal people, they were losing their jobs and they were losing their houses, and they just wanted somebody on the other side to say, wait a minute, let's go back to the good old days. And that is the danger. I'm also seeing here in various countries in Eastern Europe that I visit, there are a lot of people going, wasn't it a lot better in the 1980s when we had communism, socialism, whatever? And that's what we have to watch out for, because that is how these movements start. For me, it's part of the cycle. Okay, we had a great boom in the 90s, it kind of slowed. We had a recession. It's a very natural thing to have those things. In politics, it's also very natural. Sometimes the one side is winning. We thought we had won the war with words, and we proved it. Free trade, capitalism, great thing, communism had lost. That's what we thought in the 90s. Turns out we have a more difficult time then. So I guess we'll leave the rest of this discussion. Thank you very much.